Welcome to this week's YouTube Live. We're chatting about 4 ways to avoid content burnout. Oftentimes, we don't even recognize that we're burnt out. I have been massively burnt out lately, Jana.
Okay.
It's the end of the year, and I get into this season of busyness and like rushing to get everything done for the holiday marketing season. And I noticed this last year. Hello, Shelly. And I'm noticing it again this year because I made a note of it last year that I was really bored and burnt out with my content strategy. So yeah, this is
Around
really,
this time last year.
yeah, it's a really relevant topic for us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think that it feels like it's an urgent topic in a lot of ways too for me. I feel like a lot of people are talking about being tired. And luckily this is usually the time of year where some people in some niches and in some spaces feel a little bit more comfortable like stepping back and taking some time too. So we can, talk about that. But this is, I think, a good time of year because people are thinking about like reassessing, and it makes sense to people to take some time away, from the same like vigorous content creation schedule that they've had in the past. Not everybody. Some people actually ramp up this time of year, but some of us, take a step back. So I think it's a good, like, relevant topic right now for a lot of people. So yeah.
What comes to mind for you when you think of like one of the big reasons why people feel content burnout?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that I think of, and I'd be curious to hear how you think about this, Heather, and I can tell you a little story about it too, but I feel, and this isn't really anything like brand new, but it's sort of a different way to think about it, I think, for a lot of people, is that a lot of creators and people who are business owners who also kind of straddle the line of like running a business and also creating content, which is a whole other topic, right? Like being able to find that balance and not comparing yourself to like someone whose full-time job is creation. But a lot of people who do that and like straddle that line, they are spending a lot of time on social media where their content is kind of like almost like depreciating, if you think about like assets appreciating and depreciating. Because when you're creating content on social media and that's like your main focus, and that content either, does well or doesn't in the first 24 hours, and that's kind of like it, and then it just gets lost in a, fast moving news feed, pushed down by other things other people are creating, other things you're creating, it can feel like that bottomless pit, and that definitely contributes. And so, over the years, anyone who follows me, anyone who follows you, knows that one of the solutions that you and I have both put in place in our business to try to avoid content burnout, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So we're just maybe mitigating it a little bit and giving ourselves a chance to step back when we need to, is by focusing on at least one, in your case, more than one search engine as one of our main platforms. So that's the first thing that always comes to mind for me. I know you do that. Why don't do you want to tell people a little bit about why you've chosen to do that and what your platforms are and how I think the relationship, I'd like to know, Heather, what is the relationship between the places you've chosen to create content and whether you experience burnout, often, or that you can't come back from, if that makes sense.
So last question first, I do experience burnout with even the platforms that I've chosen, which is primarily YouTube, then my blog, and then I have other platforms in the background. I could care less about social media. Instagram is just there. I create content there because it's fun. When it is fun, I'm creating content there. And then TikTok is the same. I create on TikTok just because I need content to put other places, or I want content to put other places. I could care less what my
I feel like I almost forgot about TikTok all of a sudden, just like came like rushing back. I'm like, oh yeah, TikTok's out there. Go ahead.
So to kind of swing back around to the beginning of the question, like, why did I choose the platforms I chose and how does that relate to burnout? I chose the platforms I chose because earlier on in my business, I didn't have any search platforms. I was primarily in Facebook groups, which are private. You have to be added into them to see other people's content. So I was very much behind a gate. And then I didn't know how to create for social media earlier on in the business. It didn't seem fun to me. I couldn't wrap my head around it. So my solution was to go where people were searching for what I knew, and that was search engines. So I went to YouTube because I wanted to capitalize on video. But as you know, creating a lot of video content takes a lot of energy.
Mhm.
It also takes a lot more resources than a blog. If I were only doing my blog, like you have your blog and then your email list, I wouldn't need the team that I have to support me. I could do it on my own.
Mhm.
But because my gifts are not in video editing,
Mhm.
thumbnail making, and things like that, I very much have to have a team in place in order to continue to do the platform that I'm on. I did experience some content burnout in the beginning of my YouTube journey because I was doing all the editing and everything myself. Quickly realized that was not going to work long term and had to hire. But as it relates to like, so I went to the search engines knowing that there were questions people were asking that I could answer and they could find me.
Mhm.
Very simple. The mode of content creation being video creates a connection between me and the viewer a lot faster. It also builds trust faster. So I knew that level of, complexity was going to be there. But then where the burnout comes in is if I forget to ask my audience for feedback, if I forget to ask them, please tell me what you want to learn, which I haven't been doing as much lately. That's when I start to fall into this slump of burnout. Now, I think I'm different than other people when it comes to this because, and I'll explain. I hate talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Every single month on my YouTube channel, I don't want to create a video about how to make $200 a day using Pinterest affiliate marketing. I don't want to do it. I don't care to talk about it. I actually really hate that topic. So I am not like other Pinterest creators on YouTube where they just create the same videos over and over because they know those videos are going to get likes and views. I like complexity. I like nuance. I like growth for myself and my audience. So I like to talk about things that are not the same all the time. Now, with that being said, I know I'm going to run out of ideas at some point, and I'm going to have to start finding new ways to generate ideas and content. And that leads me into content burnout.
Yeah. Interesting.
That was very long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, it's super interesting. I think it's like you went down a different path, and it's just so interesting to think about the idea that so one of the things that's interesting, sorry, one of the things that's interesting about the way you do things is you are there's an element of omnipresence because you are creating on YouTube, really repurposing over to your blog, but there's a lot of creation that goes along with that. And then you're also you're also on other platforms. And so I think that's definitely part of what can lead to the burnout. And on some level, I'm sure it's like just the physical and emotional like exhaustion of just having a lot to do. But then I think sometimes it's also the emotional and like psychological and like intellectual really burnout that happens because you just know that there are so many places that are requiring your intellectual, that are requiring your content. So just sort of like, I imagine that kind of like can weigh on you a little bit. You know what I mean? Knowing that like there's that pressure that there are audiences on all those platforms that are expecting what you're doing, and your team is expecting you to show up and deliver the part that you need to in order to be able to distribute it. So that's really an interesting aspect of it. I have a question for you about it, but I think, did you want to comment on that?
Just another layer of complexity there, because I've been so open and like creating a community on YouTube. I don't just want an audience. I want to have a community. I also have this level of people in my comments demanding time from me that I don't necessarily have to give them on topics that I don't necessarily want to talk about or cover, or they just leave really negative comments or just really mean things. It's like I'm putting all of this time and effort into helping people, and I know those people are getting great value out of what I'm publishing. And this is not a woe is me. I don't want nobody feel bad for me. Okay. It's just, it's part of the job that there's
Yeah.
going to be people in the audience that are also going to take advantage.
Yeah.
And
It's kind
that's
of like
also
part of
like,
what you manage to, kind of, because you're managing it all. Yeah.
yeah, it's also leading into like, the most negative people are the loudest ones in the room. And unfortunately, those tend to stick out more when it comes to like, this person said this, and that means I'm going to have to create content on that. And I don't want to do that. And it's oftentimes they're complaining about things that I don't want to create content on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that like it goes back to that whole, we've heard it before, but it really is back to this basic idea that like we have a limited amount of energy. And it's renewable, like we can renew it by pouring in and out of cups. So it's like when you're creating content and you're giving to people through your content creation, you're pouring out of that cup. And you need to find opportunities to pour back in, right? And those can be just physiological ways like resting. Those can also be going back and seeing the comments from the audience that actually are supportive and the people who you're actually making an impact on in positive ways and reminding yourself of those things, but always looking for those opportunities to pour back in. But when people are like assuming and demanding and like that's going to drain out of that cup. So it's really just a question of like recognizing that you've got those cups and realizing that you can't just constantly be pouring out and having people drain out without, adding back in all kinds of ways, intellectually, physiologically, emotionally,
yeah.
Mentally. So it's like that balance. It's interesting. So my question is though, in terms of like the search engines,
Mhm.
um, can you like what would your business be like now if you hadn't invested early on in search engines? Because it doesn't sound like out of the gate you were like, I'm going to go on search engines because I don't want to burn out down the road.
No.
You went on search engines because it just made sense to you. But my God, thank goodness you did. And like, what would it be like right now for you if you hadn't invested in the three big search engines? That's three big search engines. Google, YouTube, and Pinterest are the three big search engines.
Yeah.
So, and I know some people say TikTok, but I don't know about that. But
TikTok is much more of a search engine than Instagram. So I do give it that.
okay.
I honestly don't know that I would still be in business. I don't have a crystal ball to look back and see what business
Right.
would be like, but I can tell you the driving force for me to start my YouTube channel was in August of 2019 when I lost half my clients and all the big Facebook groups were shutting down. And that's how I was finding clients at that point in time. I had no digital products. I had nothing else to sell other than services. And at that point in time, I was just a Pinterest manager. Like that's all I was doing. So I don't know that I would have continued in business, but I don't know. Maybe I would have shifted into another industry or done something different. I do have a history of working online with like customer service. I actually worked customer service for Amazon or not Amazon, AT&T for a long time when I was a stay-at-home mom. So I mean, I have experience and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
my business as it exists today obviously wouldn't be here without the search engines, and I don't know what it would have been like otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I'm driving at basically is what we've talked about before. We used to talk about it on Clubhouse sometimes too, which is that search engines, as much as we don't like to use the term passive income or passive visibility, because nothing's ever truly passive, in the grand scheme of things, search engines, if you're invested in them and you contribute to them over time and you're doing a good job, you have good content and you're using the search engines in a way that is effective, considering how people actually use them to find people and find ideas to try and things like that. If you've got that strategy in place and you're contributing over time, search engines create a much more passive visibility opportunity than social media does. Social media, it's like you're constantly feeding, the monster and it's pretty much, getting lost in that news feed. And yeah, people can go and, look in your feed. But even like stories disappear after 24 hours. I mean, the whole thing is set up so that we keep creating more and more and more and more and more on social media. And that's what the social media companies want us to do, which is fine. I'm not blaming them. Like, I'm never going to be like, oh, like the social media companies suck. Like, no, they just do what they do. And we have to understand and use it to our advantage or not. Right.
Yeah.
But search engines are different because when you go to Google and you search something, or when you go to Pinterest and you search something, or the way that recommended content shows up on YouTube and anywhere really, recommended content on any of these three platforms that are search engines, the things you created months ago and years ago, if they're good and they're relevant, they keep surfacing over and over and over in people's search feeds. So
Yep.
you create something once, and not everything you create is going to take off, but the things that do continue to give you that passive visibility over and over and over for months and years. And so for me, when I look at your business and my business too, I'm so glad that I created content on search engines for the last 8 years. I had someone ask me, Julie, actually, some of us know Julie from Clubhouse. Julie Hood asked the other day of a small group of people that stay in touch from Clubhouse. She said, "Hey guys, like, what's your lead generation, your list building," actually is what she said, which is really the same thing, list building, lead generation.
Mhm.
"What's your strategy for growing your list in 2024? And I said, "Okay, I have a two-pronged strategy for growing my list. One of them is this active thing that I'm doing where I'm running micro audio summits. And Heather's at my micro audio summit, which is coming out soon. If you're watching this in real time, if you're watching it later, it may have passed already. But and I'm going to be doing that a few times a year. That's Wendy Bergstone's micro audio summit system. But I also said the other prong of my strategy is the same that as it is what it has been, which is every morning when I wake up, I don't always look at my email list, but I do a lot of days, honestly. Like I go into Active Campaign a lot and look at my email list growth and the trends and things. Every single day, I see new people on my email list that are coming in completely passively at this point, because they're coming in through Pinterest, through links that I have out on YouTube, even though I don't even have a YouTube channel, from other people that I've appeared in their shows and on their channels and over the years. From podcast episodes that I've guested on that still show up in people's Google searches, and from Google searches and my own website. So I still every single day get new people opting into my list from those places, even though I'm not really actively creating a lot of content on those places right now. And if I am in any of those places, it's very like just seriously like low key. Like once a month, I schedule out a few pins to Pinterest. I schedule out like 15 pins a month, once a month. And sometimes I even skip a month at this point, just getting all my pages, repinned again with fresh pins.
Yeah.
So much of that has been like all that passive visibility that I get now, and that passive list growth and lead generation is because I invested in search engines. And it's just so great to know that like I made the right decisions, so. And I guess the point is, like, I would just encourage people, if you're getting started or if you're ready to kind of like start now, because, it's like that old Chinese proverb. It's like the best time to plant a tree was
Yesterday.
25 years ago. And the second best time to plant a tree is now. Like check out Heather's membership, Pin Profit Academy, where she teaches people how to do Pinterest, how to do other search engines as well. That's the focus in your academy, because that's been your focus in your business and you see the benefits. And I know, you teach those strategies. So if there's anybody out there who's listening is like, you know what, I do need to get serious about like at least one search engine, if not multiples. I think, one of the best places to start is getting into your academy and then choosing one of those three.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Pinterest, maybe it's not, and getting started.
So one of the things that we were chatting about, and I think you posted a thread on this, is content burnout could be caused by the lack of financial gain.
Yeah.
Chat about that.
Yeah, I mean, I just have this philosophy when it comes to content burnout. This is like I think we've covered two ways to kind of avoid content burnout so far, right? And this is like the third one, or maybe this is really the second one. But I think that first of all, like we have this very general accepted definition of content burnout in the space that I work in, where with online coaches and service providers and other online experts. And we think of it as, like I said earlier, the physical and emotional and mental exhaustion that comes from like constant pressure to be producing like high quality content in all the places where we've committed to doing that. And that repetitive like nature of it, can create that feeling of like a lack of creativity or lack of enthusiasm. And like, it's just a lot, right? We get tired emotionally, physically, mentally, and intellectually, I think too. So there's all things to talk about when it comes to that. But I think that a lot of people don't automatically think of this other piece, which to me is like the linchpin in all of this, which is that I think my more sort of like dialed in definition of content burnout. And this is where I want to look at my notes, but I think it happens, content burnout, for a lot of coaches and service providers, especially, who are like the kinds of people that I serve with high leverage content, which is my course and system, is that they're showing up in all these places and it's doing it all, and they're producing and they're paying attention to their metrics, and they're doing everything, but it's not actually resulting in sales, like you said, financial gain. So instead of it just being like about the exhaustion from the endless content creation, I think it's that exhaustion paired with not seeing the fruits of your labor, not making the money that you thought you would from creating that content. That's where I think that's like the real face of content burnout in our space. I think that's the part where you're constantly pouring out of your cup, but you're not seeing the cup being filled. And it's like, after a while, that gets, that's like very demotivating.
Yeah.
So to me, the answer to that is to actually stop thinking about your content just as a way to, like I see so many people being like, oh, if you're not having fun with your content, you're not doing it right. Or like, it's all about having fun and that'll come through and whatnot. But the problem with that is that fun only like gets you so far. And after a while, your cup does run dry, because the fun part of it, the novelty, does wear off, especially if you're going to repeat those messages over and over again, which is what you really need to do if your goal is to make sales with your content. And what's left is, oh, am I really getting to my end goal with all of this, which was, I run a business, and therefore my end goal is to get clients and make money and support, my family and my life and my dog, to buy lots and lots of dog treats. So I think the key really is to be willing to do the hard work of identifying a real content strategy for yourself. And that's what I teach inside of high leverage content. So this is where why my brain goes here, where I believe that there are these 9 types of content that you need to create in order to hit the mark, so that people get to hear and learn and understand more deeply and make those shifts that they need to, the things that, so that they're ready to buy from you, and so that you actually will make money with your content. And then to spend like 80 to 90% of your time on that content, and then give yourself the grace for the 10 to 20% of the time to just experiment and have fun and stuff. But it shouldn't be the other way around, in my opinion. It shouldn't be 80 to 90% like fun and just throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. It should be the other way around. It should be 80 to 90% is like dialed in based on a real plan that really works based on human psychology. And then having the other 10 to 20% of the time be the time for experimenting. And sometimes that experimentation and that fun is part of pouring back into your cup. And I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But I also really think that I see people burning out more often because they're not making money with their content. At least, like I said, the coaches and the service providers and people like that. I see that happening more often than I see it happening where people like are just burning out from just the pure, like, physical and emotional exhaustion from it, I guess. So that's my rant about it.
No, that's good. And if you aren't making money with your content, then chances are you need to reconnect with what you're doing for people, and then go back to the drawing board of like, okay, I offer Pinterest management services and I'm creating content, but I think a lot of people even don't realize the kind of content, like you were saying, that you teach in high leverage content. The type of content they're creating isn't going to result in sales, because it's doing kind of see, I noticed this early on when I started, and look, I'm one of the only Pinterest teachers that actually teaches Pinterest like for free on the internet. I give a lot away, but I do that very intentionally. There's a very, very strategic strategy behind it, and it's my membership, because it validates that I know what I'm talking about, and people get results. And then they're like, okay, well, she can definitely help me take this to the next level, so let me join the membership.
Right.
So there's definitely like a strategy, and there's goals there, but not everyone realizes they can't just teach things for free on the internet and hope for clients.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago where you're mature in business and you're finding that balance too.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this also over the years, you and I, just as friends, where we're like, and that relates back to the idea that you're creating the content strategically that you know is going to be helpful for and give people those shifts that they need, again, to learn and hear and understand, to be ready for your membership, to be ready to buy. You're not on YouTube just for the views, and your content reflects that. You're not just trying to get people to stay on your videos, till the end and, binge on another one. You actually want them to watch your video and feel ready to jump into your membership and start implementing. It's like, stop watching and get over here and start implementing.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, yeah. So it's a good strategy. And it's interesting because it also reminds me that, like, and this is sort of off topic, but like, that strategy wouldn't work for everyone. Like, your content strategy has to be tailored to your offers and like how you, like, what containers you offer your services into. And you've done a great job with making sure that your strategy rolls up properly to the offer that actually helps you serve people at your highest, which is your membership, and also supports your life and your family and
Yeah.
is your business. So
I will say it's taken me, the membership is 2.5 years old now, and it's taken me that 2.5 years to really figure out how to connect my content strategy to the membership. So if you're watching this and you're also selling courses or digital products, I kind of did it backwards. And it's not that I really meant to do that. It's just the path that I took, engineering it kind of backwards, because I did start with services and clients, and I did want my content to feed the business with services and clients. And I can tell you, making $300,000 last year in the business, 90% of that was from clients, and that was from YouTube. So it is possible to do what I do and feed your business with clients, the content strategy methodology that I follow, but it is also possible to take that and transition it and change your messaging to be the membership. So now I'm actually just like blown away. By the end of this year, the membership will make its first 6 figures.
Oh, wow. That's so
Yeah.
exciting. Congratulations. That's
And
such a
that's my goal, like going
yeah.
forward. And if I've
Right.
never communicated that to the audience, like that is the goal going forward, is to transition into teaching primarily. And Jana, how long have you and I been talking about this? And what's at 2 years?
Yep. Yep.
I want to transition into
Longer.
teaching more and taking less clients.
Right. Yep.
So I think just understanding, like, as you're going through, if you are facing periods of content burnout, like what we're talking about today, then asking yourself, why am I doing this? That was something we mentioned earlier when we were chatting, getting back to why. Why are you creating content? Who's it for? And what's the outcome?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned something that I think we should talk about a little bit. So let's recap for a second here. We talked about using search engines. I think that really is a good, like, just solid, like, tactical thing to help avoid content burnout. That's number one. We talked about number two, we talked about having a really dialed in content strategy from the perspective of, like, the HLC perspective, which is like, listen, like, focus 80 to 90% of your time on the things that are actually proven to be what people need to be ready to buy, so that you'll actually make money and not constantly be pumping out content that doesn't pay you, because that's to me the ticket. That's the real ticket to burnout. And then number three, I mean, we've covered a couple of other little things too, but what you just said about going back to basics, I think you said that when you've gone through periods of burnout, that's been helpful for you. So tell us a little bit about what happens when you do that, how you do that, and how it helps.
Yeah, so I just actually faced this problem on Tuesday when I was creating content. I'm at the end of the year. I'm pushing really hard. I only have 5 weeks left until I have to, like, I want to close my laptop and walk away for the rest of the year. I want to take 3 weeks off. You're coming to visit. I want to spend time with you. I don't want to have to be online all the time.
Right.
So I sat down on my computer on Tuesday, and I haven't been, like I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, I haven't been asking my audience for feedback. So my content bank and
I wanted to
ideas
ask you about that.
have kind of run dry.
Okay.
Sometimes I forget. So I felt like my content bank had run dry, and I literally sat at my desk for an hour looking through analytics and spreadsheets and community submission forms, just looking for ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And I still felt like I was coming up short. And I don't like to create, like I mentioned, I don't like to create the same thing over and over,
Mm-hmm.
which also adds a layer of pressure for me. Now, if you guys want to do that, you can, and it is proven to work. I just choose not to. So with that, I just said, screw it. And I took 3 sticky notes, and I think I probably still have them on the desk here somewhere. I took 3 sticky notes and I wrote 3 ideas down. And I took those 3 ideas, and one of them is a more complicated video with like screen shares and stuff like that. And the other 2 is literally an intro, outro, and a screen share. And they're like 9 minutes videos. And it's just really basic content that's going to help other people who are in my spot. So those videos are what to do when you don't feel like pinning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to tell you guys because I think they'll be good videos. What to do, don't feel like pinning, do this instead. That's the working title.
Interesting.
How to know if Pinterest will work for your brand. That's the more complex video.
Okay.
And I like doing complex videos, like deep thought videos.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 pin types to test in your Pinterest strategy.
Nice.
So I'm hoping that's the majority of November's content. I'm hoping that those do well. If they don't, that's okay too. But I just kind of went back to basics. The content types, the 3 Pinterest pin types, I've been having this conversation over in the membership like pretty frequently. And then what to do when you don't feel like pinning. Just had this conversation again today in the membership. It's something that comes up frequently. People get burnt out creating Pinterest pins.
Sure.
Same deal.
Yeah, it's pretty repetitive.
And then the community is always like, how do I know if Pinterest will work for my brand? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Back to basics.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. So it's not that because you said at the beginning, you don't want to create the same things over again. Right. So you're not, it's not like you're not just going to go back to your old YouTube videos and be like, okay, I'm just going to recreate my first 10 videos.
Right.
So you're okay with covering similar things that you've covered before, but you want them to be fresh to you. You want them to feel fresh to you.
Yeah.
You're going back to basics, and you're probably covering them in a little bit of a different way than you did originally, but you're not even comparing. You're just creating things that are basic, right?
Yeah.
Am I describing that?
Pinterest, I did a video on this, and Melvin asked this in the chat earlier about Pinterest trends. I did a video last year on the new Pinterest trends tool, and then I did a video this year on how to use Pinterest trends to create content.
Yeah.
So it's the same topic, but it's a new way to use it, or a new thought.
Yeah, there's always different lenses to look at the same topics through, really. Yeah, very interesting. And I just think that, and that comes for me back to something that I was talking about earlier too, which is that I think we have to remember that if you're the kind of person who always wants to create something new, and wants to talk about the latest and the greatest and the trends and things like that, like that's okay. And you can follow your fun. But I think for those of us who are using our content to attract and convert clients and paying students, right? Those of us that are coaches, course creators, service professionals, like it's not always going to be fun, because I mentioned one way that it's not always fun because we have to repeat ourselves. And then another way is that sometimes it doesn't feel fun to us to cover the basics. I mean, it sounds to me like you're excited about covering the basics, but oftentimes I know I feel like, oh, that doesn't feel as fun to cover something basic.
Yeah, I feel like that too.
Because it's not as challenging, I guess, mentally for us. But we have to remember our ideal clients and our ideal students are like several steps behind us typically, and they need the basics. So if we go creating the things that are more complex without filling that gap of the basics, that's not going to serve us well either if we want to, again, make money and get clients and make sales with our content.
I think too, when people follow fun and trends, and I see this actually a lot with influencers that burn out, and they talk about content burnout on TikTok or Instagram Reels or whatever. They're following their fun. They're using Pinterest or not Pinterest trends. They're using like Instagram Reel trends or whatever it is. they end up creating and looking like everyone else. And then they wonder why there's no sales. Well, when you look like everyone else, there is no, what's the real reason someone should buy from you rather than Susie?
Right.
There's no differentiation. I think I said that wrong, but there's no difference in what you're doing and what someone else is doing. So what's the unique perspective that someone should buy from you for?
Exactly.
And I also think that when there's no continuity with an actual content strategy, with what you want to sell and why you want to sell it, and the transformation that you're going to get for your clients or your students or whoever you're working with, and it could just be regular people out in the internet. So if you're helping people with, weight loss or getting better gut health through products that you're repping, if there's no continuity with the transformation that they're getting and why you're doing it, I feel like there's also going to be a disconnection with your content, because you're not going to be in love with it. I think you have to fall in love with the process and like actually making a difference in people's lives for longevity.
I would agree with that. Yeah, you don't have to love all your content, but loving the process is definitely going to help a lot to avoid that burnout, along with the other things we're talking about, connecting to going back to the basics, connecting to remembering your why, those types of things. And you said something about influencers too that I was gonna forget. Oh, I know. I was gonna say in HLC, we talk about a couple of things. We touch on the idea of thought leadership. And I think that as coaches and course creators and service-based businesses, we, meaning my community, sometimes it's easy for us to get confused by or over-influenced by influencers and forget that we're not running the same business model that they are. It's not about the latest, greatest. It's, so that happens. I forget why I was saying that, though. I can't remember how that was connected to what you were saying.
The way that I think about that, Jana, is kind of what we've talked about in the past, on Clubhouse specifically. And you mentioned this earlier, the way that I monetize my YouTube channel. Sorry, I'm watching a coyote out my back window.
Cool.
I'm really here. The way that I monetize my YouTube channel is so different than all of my competitors on YouTube. And if you go and you watch any of my competitors on YouTube, you'll see they have much larger YouTube channels.
I would venture to say they're not your competitors.
So, well, in the scheme of things on Pinterest, they're a Pinterest marketing channel and I'm a Pinterest marketing channel. So
yeah.
You can choose them or you can choose me or you can watch both. But I'm not competing with them. Like I'm not out to compete with them.
I mean, I
am out to compete with their keywords though, and I will come after them.
I will come after your keywords.
I'm coming after your keywords. With that being said, like
I love that.
I don't like to compare myself and my monetization strategy with them because I don't want to monetize just views. Sure, I have ads on YouTube. There's probably ads on this live stream. I dare to guess that YouTube puts ads on there, but that's not ultimately what I care about. I care about helping people in real life.
Right. Well, and this comes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago. Like, that's why you stand out, right? That's why you're not doing what everybody else is doing. And that is exactly why people should buy from you.
Yeah.
And they do. That is literally why they do, instead of buying, I'm sure maybe some of them do buy some $27, how to make $30,000 on Pinterest this week, PDF or whatever from somebody who has, a massive Pinterest marketing channel on YouTube. But at the end of the day, the smart ones, either in the beginning or eventually get around to realizing that if they really want to learn,
the content of that PDF is create a business profile and make boards.
Right. Make boards, and use trends. That's how you stand out. That's why people over the years have identified you as the person who they should buy from, just like you were talking about the a few minutes ago in the context of like the Instagram or the TikTok influencers. The same thing happens on YouTube.
Yeah.
Same. All right. So we're a little off topic, but getting back to content burnout, I feel like there might have been one other thing
there is.
About. Okay.
There is. Yeah. So it's this thought process of when you are feeling burnt out and you just don't know what to do. So many times we're told as content creators to not consume as much content for whatever reason. There's a myriad of them. I personally don't consume other people's Pinterest content because I don't want their language influencing what I know to be true about my audience and what I want to teach.
Yeah.
So if you do feel like you are in this place of like content burnout, it's just going out there and consuming some content to get inspired. Now, you don't have to do this on social media. You can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can watch YouTube videos. One of the best ways that I actually get inspired is by watching YouTube videos and reading books that are outside of my industry. So one of the books that's really inspiring me right now, I think I mentioned this on last week's live, was the new Adam Grant book, Hidden Potential.
Yeah.
It's like he wrote the book for me.
No.
But I just feel like so inspired by it, and it's giving me a new outlook on how I can create content for my community.
Yeah, I love that. We'll have to make sure we put the book in the, I always want to say the show notes.
It can be show notes.
In the
The
description of this live video after we finish. Yeah. Adam Grant, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think going and getting inspired, breaking away from what you do every day, giving yourself an actual break from it, whether that's a day off or a weekend away from your laptop or a week off from work. Oftentimes we come back from that refreshed with a new mindset. We get some new ideas. We get some space away from it because we're so close to this thing all the time, this content creation engine that we're creating.
Yeah.
Driving the damn thing. We got to get out of the driver's seat, I feel like, and take a walk.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. It's a good analogy too. Yeah. And so I love this fourth thing. This is the fourth thing that we're covering about 4 ways to avoid content burnout. And this one's more like, well, I guess, you could use this as a strategy to avoid it if you start to feel it coming on. If you start to be like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit like resentful of my audience or my content, or I'm starting to feel a little bit like not excited to do the things that are on my to-do list today when it comes to content. Those are like maybe little clues that you're starting to feel a little content burnout, or maybe you're just like full tilt into it and like you hate it right now or whatever. Stepping away, taking a break. But the way you just framed it is so interesting because it's not just about stepping away and taking a break and getting space. It's also maybe going into a season where you do consume some content. Like you said, as creators, a lot of times we make a rule for ourselves that I'm going to consume less than I create. Or I'm going to like just cut out consuming because it's giving me comparisonitis or whatnot.
Yep.
So going back and consuming, but looking for things to consume that aren't necessarily like, again, I don't want to say competitors, but like in your space, going outside of your space for inspiration. I love it. I like that a lot.
I think allowing yourself to be creative and think of new ways to create content, or maybe allowing yourself to create in ways that you've never done it before. Just embracing no rules and creativity can sometimes also lend itself to new, refreshing thoughts. Somebody in my membership said today, if you're feeling, I can't remember the exact phrasing that he used, but basically like, if you're feeling like you are inspired to create Pinterest pins, just come to one of these live calls because I will kick you in the ass.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like that's a great tip too, is just having accountability and people in your world that inspire you and keep you accountable.
Yeah.
But I also think that like one of the things we talked about before we went live is that if you're feeling content burnout, like it could be that you just need to kind of push through, but 9 times out of 10, like just pushing through and getting it done is going to be a temporary fix. And
it also could lead to creating content that makes no conversions and turns your audience away too.
Yeah, if you're feeling, if you're coming at it feeling resentful of your audience or feeling like, oh, no one's going to read this and buy, or yeah, I mean, that's like a whole other topic, is like the mindset around like what kind of energy your content is putting out.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why avoiding it and mitigating content burnout would be important for creating content that will convert, because you do want it to have, on that kind of woo level, like the right energy.
Yep.
Coming from the right place. So that's a whole nother topic for sure. But yeah, but I mean, there is something to be said for like balancing those two things. Like, yes, just push through and get it done, because Sometimes that's what you got to do when you run a business.
Yeah.
But then also allow yourself like, okay, maybe you are going to just show up to Heather's membership call, get the accountability and get your damn Pinterest pen scheduled for the next 30 days.
Yeah.
But like do that so that you have a chance to step away next week and do a little bit of resting and a little bit of consuming outside of your niche, so that you can pour back into that cup, I think is the
That's
idea here.
why this Tuesday, when I created 3 YouTube videos, it has been a really long time since I've created 3 YouTube videos in one day.
Mhm.
And I was really energized after I landed on those 3 topics. So I rewatched the videos and I don't feel like my energy was lacking by the third. They are very fast videos though, and easy to consume, which was intentional. But
Mhm.
that allows me next Tuesday to take a break from filming for a week and start getting more of my membership content migrated back to WordPress, which I've been telling my membership I'm going to have done. Ideally, by the end of November, I'm going to have them back in WordPress. And, that frees up time for me to think about other things and do other things that my audience is actually, I'd say audience, I mean community.
Yeah.
They're asking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that brings me back to this idea of, this is more possible for you because you are focused on search engines.
Mhm.
Batching and walking away doesn't really work as well on social because the engagement that's required on social media to get any traction with your content is so different than what would be required in terms of engagement on Pinterest or YouTube or Google. Obviously, there's literally no such thing as really, I don't know if engagement could be like clicking on links and things, but I'm talking about like the having conversations with humans kind of part, which also, by the way, can be very draining, right? For a lot of people, emotionally draining for a lot of creators. So again, for all those reasons, I circle back to this idea that, listen, if you don't already have at least one search engine that you're committed to showing up and creating content for regularly, seriously, if you're worried about content burnout and on any level, if you're starting to feel it, if you want to avoid it, like really get at least one search engine going in your repertoire. It's going to make a big difference in the long run.
I think it's also, it also helps to fill a hole for a lot of people who may have, leads that have dried up. This is not an instantaneous thing that's going to work for you, but it's definitely, it definitely builds this ability for you to take a step back from, other ways that you were looking to find leads in your business.
Right.
So if you have to show up every single day and cold pitch via email for 2 hours, starting now, a year from now, your lead pipeline is going to look way different if you start with a search engine and you start intentionally creating content for a search engine. Allowing yourself breaks, allowing yourself some freedom and flexibility in your creation process, getting yourself some systems and workflows in place to ensure that when you do feel like you need to take a break for a week, you feel okay taking a break for a week.
Right.
But I do think for anyone that might be watching this because they see this content burnout title and they're thinking to themselves, man, my lead pipeline is dried up. I'm not getting referrals anymore. Like that was me in 2019. It's why I started on a search engine.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can allow a year from now, look, it's an investment,
Right.
time and monetarily.
Right. Which goes back to the story I was telling you earlier about Julie's answer, which I was like, well, yeah, there's this active strategy that I'm going to do to grow my list, but it's in addition to this other thing that I have going on where every morning I wake up and I have 5, 6, 10 new people on my list who came from Pinterest, Google, YouTube, and I don't have to do anything. So when I take my 3 weeks off in December, which I'm also taking off, like I don't have to worry like, oh, I'm going to come back in January and my list will be the same size. It's still growing while I'm away. And that's because of search engines.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
and actively ask people to join your email list or buy your products. Like this isn't something that you should be shy to do. We are in business to make money. So sometimes that also means you just have to ask for the sale. If you've never asked people for a sale before. So I recently published, I can't remember what YouTube video it was, but at the end, I think it might have been my board strategy YouTube video. At the end of that, I hard pitched my membership, and I very rarely on YouTube hard pitch my membership. I have other sales tactics that get people there. But I've also recently started integrating a very active email list growth strategy into my YouTube videos. So like
Yeah.
showcasing like how to do something and then telling them I have, like with my Pinterest ChatGPT prompts, for example.
Mhm.
And then just telling them if you want these prompts, you should grab them. The link is in the description to do
Yeah.
that. And that has skyrocketed my email list growth.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
mentioned
so
this the other
good.
day, like your email list is growing so
That's
fast.
so good. Yeah.
Hello, I never asked for it before.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So
Good. So in that spirit, I want to let everybody know who's listening that in the show notes or the description of this video, we'll make sure there are a couple of opportunities to get onto Heather's email list,
and
um,
Jana.
and my email list. And when we do that, it's because we're offering you additional high value free resources. So we'll drop a couple of those opportunities here too. And get on our lists.
Okay, that's what we're going to leave it with. Now, next week we are talking about
I totally don't remember what we're talking about next week.
content ideas to sell your digital products.
Love that. Oh, that's exciting.
So if you are feeling some content burnout, next week's video is going to be a really good inspirational one for you.
Some ideas going.
Yeah.
Love it.
So we will see you then. Until then, check out the description below this video after it's done, and we will catch you next week.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Take care of yourselves.